Some final thoughts now from Steve Rogers on the tragic events in Orlando, Florida. Steve is a retired lieutenant detective formerly with the Nutley, New Jersey Police Department. So how do you wrap this up?
Well, what's important is classification of these incidents are very important because it drives the investigation. There's no question, at least in my view, that the President of the United States should make it very clear that these are radical Islamic terrorists. We need to understand that we are at war with them, so then there will never be any more talk about this being hate crimes or bias crimes or workplace violence. We're at war, and once we identify ourselves at war, these individuals, these terrorists, become enemy combatants, and then they're subject to a whole different type of, if you will, justice system.
And look, the FBI has a fine, distinguished track record of foiling a great many terrorist attacks, and I don't mean to diminish it in any way. But are there lessons to be learned here by the FBI, which had this guy in their sights 3 times?
Well, perhaps more information sharing and quicker information sharing, as we stated earlier, especially in this case with the chief of the Orlando Police Department. But let me add this. Those fellows at the FBI and those gals are under intense pressure. They are trying to track down every possible lead that they're getting. They, too, need help from the White House, and they need help from the Congress.
But they're sometimes a little bit too insular, which I don't understand.
Well, I think you find that in a lot of agencies because there is a fear that a critical investigation could be compromised. I believe that's the driving force behind some of this stuff, but those are things that we're now going to have to look at, review, and move on and do what we have to do and all that we can do to stop terrorist attacks.
You know, and when this Mateen was under investigation at least twice before, possibly 3 times, no doubt his family would have been interviewed. Would they not have been interviewed those previous times? And they're being interviewed, their home, the family home is being searched as well.
Well, absolutely right, and I find it unbelievable that they did not know more about their own relative, especially with regard to being influenced by terrorists. But it goes back to that principle, if you see something, say something, and that's where your local cop, where your local police officer comes in handy. Perhaps these people didn't have enough confidence in the federal government, but they sure would have confidence in a local cop that knew them.
What about the family if it is proven that they did know that something else was going on here? Could they be held liable, and in what way?
Well, if it's proven that they were part of the planning, if they were part of setting up the operation, sure, they would be held liable and they could be taken to task by the Justice Department. But I think that's a far stretch at this point. But you never know where these things are going to turn.
But if they just turned a blind eye to his actions, his radicalization?
Well, I think that goes on a lot. People turn a blind eye out of fear. They turn a blind eye because they don't want to get involved. It's not a crime to turn a blind eye unless they were actually involved in the establishing and preparation of this attack.
A lot of loved ones, families are simply in denial. Steve Rogers, you've been with us over the course of the last 3 hours. Many thanks, sir. We appreciate your insights.
And of course, our prayers